happy anniversary, Queen. And happy anniversary, Brian May. Happy anniversary, Roger Taylor. Happy anniversary, John Deacon. And, of course, happy anniversary, Freddie Mercury. Friday, 13th of July, 1973, exactly 50 years ago, Queen released their first album entitled Queen. So again, happy 50th anniversary, Queen. Happy half a century anniversary. Queen's work included 15 studio albums, 10 live albums, 16 compilation albums, 2 soundtrack albums, 2 extended plays, 73 singles, and 7 promotional singles. Do I need to tell you anything about Queen or any of its members? Surely not. You will have to fill me in with details, just as you've done with every other band that I have visited so far, and especially with the 2 that I have started to explore in more detail, the Beatles and Pink Floyd. There's one word which I've heard over and over again when talking about Queen, and that is versatility. You already know that I've listened to 2 Queen songs so far. Love of My Life, which was actually the song with which I began my journey through rock music here at Virgin Rock, and Bohemian Rhapsody, which quickly became one of my top favorites. Commenting on these 2 videos, you've written over and over again that Queen is one of the most versatile bands ever. And Vlad has told me the same thing, that Queen's opus is incredibly versatile. And, along with you and Vlad, Steve Baltin joins the chorus, writing for Forbes magazine in January 2019 that musicians have been saying for decades, Queen are in the pantheon of all-time greats. In the countless interviews I have done over the years, they have been name-checked by numerous superstars. What is most impressive, though, is the diversity of artists they've influenced. Why Queen were able to cut across such an incredibly wide range of musicians is easy to see. They are one of the most versatile bands that rock has ever had. So, since Queen has such a massive influence in the development of rock music, and since this year, today, we celebrate Queen's 50th anniversary, I've decided to start a new journey with a new series entitled Queen 50 series. Since you're familiar with my ongoing The Beatles 150 series, you already know what that means. And Vlad has selected 50 Queen songs for me to go through and listen and analyze in chronological order, for the same reason that I am doing the Beatles in chronological order. I want to see their development along the way. But today, for the first video, I am not going to start with the first song, but rather with the last one. I'll be starting with Freddie's last, which is, in a way, was my first, even though I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe that sounds confusing, but remember how this entire idea about Virgin Rock came about? Even before it started, I had that phone conversation I've told you about with, back then, my friend, now my husband, Vlad, and we were talking about opera. At one point he asked, "What do you think about Freddie Mercury's voice in his duet with Montserrat Caballé in Barcelona?" And it was then that I asked the famous or infamous question, "Who is Freddie Mercury?" To which Vlad responded with a very long, stunned silence. Now, he's told me that Barcelona is from an album with the same title, Barcelona, and that this was the final album Freddie recorded outside of Queen. I understand this was a very special project to Freddie, which he started right after he found out that he was sick with AIDS. Knowing that his days were numbered, he threw himself completely into this project. So in a way, Barcelona marks the beginning of my journey and the end of Freddie's journey. Now, since the time I started the Virgin Rock YouTube channel. I've been tempted to record a first listen of this song, not only because I'm very curious about it, especially after the 2 Queen songs that I have already done, but also because it was the catalyst for this whole project, this entire journey. But Vlad asked me to save it for a special occasion, and, well, what better occasion than for today's celebration? In fact, on the last Virgin Rock Live, one of the questions that came in was whether I have listened to the Barcelona album yet, and if not, am I saving it for a special occasion? And I kind of had to sidestep the question a bit because I didn't want to give away this project coming up. But here we are now. And Vlad has a specific arrangement for how I will listen, and he tells me that I'll understand why. So here's how it's going to go. First, I will watch a short documentary about Freddie's Barcelona project. Then I will listen to a live recording of the song, Barcelona, uninterrupted, and then I will go back and listen to the studio version and pause and talk whenever I want. This format is a bit different than what I normally do here on this channel, but it's for a special occasion and a very special, significant piece of music. And I'm very interested to see what this documentary has to say and go through all the different steps. And of course, I'm eager to find out how more about this blend of Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Caballé and the whole opera thing and everything. Of course, I've already heard 2 of Freddie's pieces, so Queen's pieces, so I already know what his voice is like, and I know that I have something nice to look forward to. So let's watch the documentary.
What drives you on?
At this very moment, it's Montserrat Caballé. She's the best. Now I'm going into opera, forget rock and roll.
He says, look, I have now heard that...
So, this is Freddie here, and he's a rock star. He's a rock singer. And this is starting out with him saying, rock and roll? That's interesting. And he's enamored, infatuated with Montserrat Caballé. All right, let's see.
best voice in the world.
He was just like a 12-year-old kid seeing the Beatles.
He said, go and find her and tell her I want to sing with her.
He was a little shy in the beginning to sing with me.
He was so nervous that instead of saying, how lovely to meet you, would you like some lunch? He just blurted out, I've written a song for you, would you like to hear it?
She said, how many songs does a normal rock and roll album have? And I said something like 10. Oh, we'll do 10 songs then.
And we knew we were away. And then she went on to say, but the song I really want is about my hometown. I want a song about Barcelona.
I had this perfect dream. This dream was me and you.
I'm sure the opera critics will slam it and everything. But I mean, this is something that, it's a good challenge at this time in life,
It's so interesting, though. He's so nonchalant about it. He's so, like a kid. As that guy said, like a kid. You know. Okay, let's go do some opera. Why not? I mean, let's go hop on the merry-go-round at the playground.
Time in life,
Miracle sensation, my guide and inspiration. Now my dream is slowly coming true.
Well, the first album had sold about 130,000 copies, and CBS were reeling from the loss that they'd made on the first album. So I approached Walter Yetnikoff in New York, And he sat there, he said, well, I understand, we've got to do a second album, so what is it? I said, well, it's a duet album. And he said, oh, well, that sounds interesting. That's might get something of that. Duetting with who? And I said, it's Montserrat Caballé. She's a Spanish opera singer. And he completely freaked. And in the end, he paid us quite a substantial amount of money to go away and deliver the album somewhere else, which is what we did.
It was a
I can believe that, because this whole idea of blending rock with something like opera, well, from my side of the music world, I remember when Vlad asked if I had heard Freddie Mercury and Caballé together in Barcelona. I remember my mind was spinning at high speed and I was thinking, I know who Montserrat Caballé is. Freddie Mercury? Am I supposed to know Freddie Mercury? I don't know this name. I don't know this name. Who is this? Am I exposing some great, I'm a musician. I should know the names and the voices of the famous greats, right? At least in classical music. And I'm thinking, I've never heard of Freddie Mercury. Who, where, what have I missed? And I had to say, who is Freddie Mercury? And I thought that I was asking who some great opera singer was. And then I remember his stunned silence. Even on the phone, I could tell it was a real shocker for him. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I missed? And then finally he says, you don't know who Freddie Mercury is? I said, maybe I've missed something because I don't know the name. Is he a tenor? Is he a baritone? And then Vlad went on to explain that after he got over his shock enough to start telling me, he said he's a rock singer. He's part of Queen. And I said, Queen? I don't know. I mean, I guess I've heard the name Queen, but I don't know what kind of music it is or anything. I've never listened to it. So, of course, probably the vast majority of classical musicians are not as ignorant as I was. If you're interested in my story of why I ended up that way, you can go back and watch the introductory video, and then you can also watch the first live on the channel. Those tell a bit more of my backstory and the backstory of this whole project. But anyway, my point is, as classical musicians, we don't really spend a lot of time integrating with rock music. And I'm just trying to imagine, especially back at that time. Okay, now it's the 21st century. This is 2023, and we've come a long way in the classical music world about being willing to try out and explore different genres and artists, and the idea of a crossover artist has really become popular in recent decades. But back when this was done, I think it would have been really hard to sell to a publisher from the classical side, and I can certainly imagine it's the same from the rock side. So this response does not surprise me.
And deliver the album somewhere else, which is what we did.
It was a difficult thing. Don't forget, this has never been done before, really.
And we delivered the
I believe
album, and it was a huge success. Now that we're at the 25th anniversary of the Barcelona song, it seemed the right moment to do what I'm quite sure Freddie would have wanted, which was to do the album with full orchestra and not with keyboards. So we are working with Stuart Morley, who's our musical director from We Will Rock You in London, and he has gone back to the album and orchestrated it faithfully for full 80-piece orchestra. And then we will put Freddie and Montserrat's voice back onto that and realise the album that I think should have been there had he had the balls to do it at the time.
Every song that is inside the album is an encounter two worlds encounter.
Rising sun will bless my morning with a smile, a magic pearl from the sea.
And in the same time, two friends love it for music because he loves music so much.
And even though I've only listened to 2 songs by Freddie Mercury, even in those 2 songs, I can hear his love and his passion for music. And what I know about this project, what I'm learning about this project right now, it's just exploding with passion for music. And the only way that a project like this could have been conceived and followed through has to come from a deep love and passion for music, because you have to have the vision, you have to have the commitment, you have to have the drive and the fire for it, and for it to actually be successful, rather than some esoteric technical exercise in mixing 2 different musical styles.
I think one of the reasons that Freddie put so much of himself into the Barcelona project was the fact that he had just found out of his AIDS status.
Where can I belong in this great big world of sadness? How can I forget?
In his mind, he had to create the best music he could for Barcelona because it might be the last thing that he was ever involved in.
They're lost and they know where to be found.
Every time I saw it, I see his adieu.
Go on.
He absolutely immersed himself into this album completely and utterly.
I'm glad I did it. It was a totally different adventure. I'd like to see other rock and roll singers try things like that, you know, and see if they can get away with it.
They probably couldn't get away with it, Freddie, but you did.
There you are. I'm wonderful, aren't I?
Yes, absolutely.
That's an interesting thought too, this idea of, okay, Freddie could get away with it. Could anybody else get away with it? I'd like to see some more people try and get away with it, try to make something happen as successfully as this project came out to be. And then the question, could anybody else do it? I think a lot of it depends on mindset, and again we're back to the idea of vision and love for music. I don't mean love for rock versus love for classical, but love for music and a vision of music that is alive and passionate and speaks potently, speaks directly, and is an honest, genuine expression, is has artistic merit, and at the same time is relatable. And that's what I've heard in the 2 songs that I've listened to of Freddie's voice and Queen's music, is there seems to be this very pure commitment and ideal towards which they are striving and reaching without obsessing about boundaries of, okay, is it this genre or this genre or this subgenre? Of course, a lot of those didn't even exist back in that day, but as I am going through this journey, this question has come up from time to time of is it this, is it that? Is that a misnomer? Or, oops, I called it the wrong thing because I didn't know. And, of course, all of those labels are important in one sense because they help us to trace patterns and understand the material that we're working with, that we're handling. But at the same time, when you're going in to create something, I think that it is a very very productive and good thing to set aside the boundaries, set aside the labels, and just go for the music. And that, I think, from what I'm seeing here, seems to be Freddie's approach.
I think this particular project will give the album a sort of second birth. Because a lot of people know the song, but they don't know that it comes from an album.
It was, for him, I think, possibly the most important work he ever did.
He has quite a stage presence. I haven't watched him perform before. I've only listened to those two songs. And now in this documentary clip, I just catch a couple glimpses of him on stage, and there is a charisma and a presence about him, which is, it's like an atomic bomb. It's just full and exploding sparks everywhere. And I felt it right away as I was watching. So now I'm eager to watch the live version. But before I go listen and watch the live, Vlad has given me a little paragraph of facts to make sure that I am clear about. So I'll read these out loud and make sure that we are all together. Barcelona was co-written by Mercury with Mike Moran, who also appeared in its video and played piano and all keyboards for the studio recording. Freddie had been a longtime fan of opera, and especially of Montserrat Caballé. I picked that up in the documentary. In 1986, he mentioned on Spanish television that he would like to meet her, and they met for the first time in Barcelona in February 1987. And later, when the city had been chosen for the 1992 Summer Olympics, Caballé, a native of the city, was asked to help produce a song for the games. She asked Mercury to collaborate. Interesting. So what I saw in the documentary had me thinking that it was all Freddie's initiative. Now I see that Caballé was instrumental in bringing this to fruition as well. Caballé became enthusiastic about the project, and instead of recording a single, she proposed to make an album, to which Mercury agreed. That must be why she was asking how many songs are typically on a rock album. Barcelona, their proposed opening song, had to be completed by 1988 in time to be entered as a candidate for the 1992 Olympic theme. The selection was scheduled for 1988, 4 years before the games. The recording was complicated by Caballé's tight schedule. Of course, she's a world-class opera singer. To save time, Mercury recorded the song, singing Caballé's part in falsetto. He would then send a tape to Caballé to prepare her for the joint studio sessions. Interesting. All right, so that's the backstory. Now I am going to listen to a live performance.
Barcelona, Barcelona. had this perfect dream. This dream was me and you. I want all the world to see a miracle sensation, my guide and inspiration. Now my dream is slowly coming true. The wind is a gentle breeze. The bells are ringing out. They're calling us together, guiding us forever. Wish my dream would never go away. Barcelona. It was the first time that we met. Barcelona. How can you forget the moment that you stepped into the room? You took my breath away. Barcelona. God will we meet again someday. Let the songs begin. Let the music play. Make the voices sing. Start the celebrations. Let pride come alive and shake the foundations from the skies. Such a beautiful horizon. Barcelona, like a jewel in the sun. Por ti seré gobierno de tu Barcelona, if God is willing, if God is willing, friends until the end. Viva!
That was incredible.
That was live.
Was that the Olympic performance? No. It was Olympic worthy. That was great. I feel like I want to watch it again, but okay, I'll watch it again, but not right this minute. Because next, I am going to go and listen to the studio version, and I'll have the sheet music, and we'll pause along the way and take our time going through the music together.
Freddie's voice in Barcelona.
I can't believe that you've managed to hold that for so long. Before I listen to the studio version, I just want to say a couple things because they're in my mind right this minute. First of all, the fact that Freddie composed this music. And I didn't know what to expect as far as style and that sort of thing. This is clearly not rock music. I was wondering if maybe it would be something kind of like the progressive rock that I've listened to, but no, this is entirely different. It is much more classically oriented. My classical side is totally in tune with and in love with this performance. I love the fact that it was Freddie who composed it. It wasn't just Freddie singing his part, but he himself composed this. And that lets me know that he was very well versed in music overall. He didn't just live in the rock music world. He must have been a voracious consumer of music, classical music, opera. Well, I know that he took some piano lessons as a child. I know that he didn't become terribly advanced, technically advanced, but obviously he has an ear for it. And throughout his life, he's built this repertoire and exposed himself to vast amounts of really outstanding music, and it shows here. But just because you listen to and you consume a lot of music doesn't mean you can create something hair-raisingly amazing. And yet, this is what Freddie has done. Well, of course, with music like this, it's not just the composition, it's also the performers. And that is why in classical music, we put so much emphasis on a person's interpretation of a work and not so much whether they composed it. And I've discovered that in the rock world, it's kind of a little bit different. You almost, I won't say that you look down on covers of songs, but you certainly put higher value on the creative compositional element, and there's a distinct difference in your mind between somebody who is doing a cover and somebody who is performing their original creation. But anyway, here is Freddie Mercury along with Mike Moran and their composition. And it's a really great piece of music, musically speaking. The other thing that struck me as I was listening to the live version was how well suited both voices were for this song and how well they worked together. Of course, Caballé's voice is a highly trained, very refined, and incredibly competent voice for this type of music. But Freddie's voice held up perfectly, naturally, easily. He doesn't have the classical polish, but at the same time, he's not struggling at all. And he's in full control of his voice and the music that he's creating with his voice. And I like the way that his contribution to the music, his vocal contribution to the music, gave it a modern flavor without destroying or weakening the other classical operatic elements. And I guess that's one thing that I still haven't listened to enough progressive rock to really decide whether I like it or not. And to figure out whether I think it has a lot to offer. But this certainly has a lot to offer. And it feels both classic and modern at the same time because of the voices, because of everything, really. I mean, it's great. Freddie's voice was, as I said, completely in control of the music. And the sound he produced was, although not a classical sound, was powerful and expressive and colorful, dynamic. It was very much alive. Vlad told me at the end of that recording, he said that was live. And I said, and alive. And that is the truth. That music lived in that moment. And we can see it and we can hear it even now in this recording. Well, a couple evenings ago, I guess probably in preparation for this, although he didn't say specifically, but Vlad called me into the computer and said, let's look at a couple of these recordings on YouTube of Pavarotti playing with non-classical singers. And I don't know the names, but who was it that was doing O Sole Mio?
Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams. Okay, so I don't know how to place Bryan Adams, but what I saw with Pavarotti and Bryan Adams on stage made me laugh. It was sweet in its own way. It was entertaining. There was a certain specialness to it. But poor Bryan Adams, his voice was so dwarfed and overwhelmed by Pavarotti's voice. It was comical, at least from my perspective. And here I didn't have that response of, oh boy, the rock singer can't keep up with the sound production and the technical control and the musical production. No, this singer, Freddie Mercury, he owned it. And I think it was great. So I'm ready to now listen to this next recording, and I have the score here, and we'll go through it together. I'll pause along the way if I have anything I want to stop and say something about, but we'll enjoy it. This little entrance of the harp right here reminded me also of Love of My Life, and the harp in there, and when I discovered that Brian May had sweated over learning to get those arpeggios and glissandi to work, and my amazement at thinking, why didn't he just call a harpist? Obviously, this is a real orchestra here, so they have a real harpist. It's not Brian May at the harp this time. And of course, it's standard for a harp to be in an orchestra. But the fact that Freddie included it, I guess he liked those sounds.
I had this perfect dream. This dream was me and you. I want all the world to see. A miracle sensation, my guide and inspiration. Now my dream is slowly coming true.
There's so much I could say right now about the incredible refinement and craft and art of those first lines. How the music starts with one voice to another, back to the first, then to the second, and how the music builds throughout, and how well paced and well structured and well designed it is. But I guess I will save that for an in-depth. I just want to let you know that this opening here is not only just incredibly pleasing to listen to, but it is a beautiful musical composition, technically speaking as well. And that's one of the things that makes an incredibly great piece of music, something that lasts for decades, for centuries, is the combination of musical life and technical competency. without the musical element, it just doesn't catch anyone's ears. Without the technical substance, it's not likely to last for centuries, because over the course of so much time, only the best of the best of the best gets preserved and passed on from one generation to the next consistently. And I'm thinking back to the Beatles, and I guess we've kind of touched on this at times, is will their music exist 100 years from now, 200 years from now? I guess it will, of course, because we have recordings. And it will be a kind of classic. Now, I haven't gotten deep into the later Beatles, where their craft was so much more developed and refined than the early stuff that I've listened to up to this point. The ones that I've listened to up to this point, I guess I would say that, just my guess, right? I can't predict, I'm no prophet, and there's no telling how things are going to go. But my guess is that 100, 200 years down the road, those songs, if they are kept in the popular mind and popular repertoire, will settle into a kind of folk music repertoire. They are songs that are singable and fun to sing along with. They are completely different from something like this. This, 100 or 200 years from now, it will still be a beautiful example of incredible music. And not only performance-wise on the recording, not only the voices, but this is the kind of music that makes me say, oh, let's put this on, let's put this together in an orchestra and let's give a performance of this, because it's the kind of music that you can just throw yourself into with a passion, and there's so much in there to sustain and explore and produce, and that's how I feel about it. So I am going to dig into this more technically in the in-depth, but for now I just wanted to let you know that I see a very, very fine design and structure.
A gentle breeze.
I love the little wind there.
The bells are ringing out. They're calling us together, guiding us forever. My dream would never go away.
Such a beautiful duet there.
Barcelona. It was the first time that we met. Barcelona. How can I forget the moment that you stepped into the room? You took my breath away.
I couldn't stop it in the middle of the phrase. But that phrase, I guess, was what I was talking, one of the ones that was in my mind when I was saying. Freddie's voice is not only incredibly capable, but also incredibly modern in this moment. This is not the kind of voice you would expect to hear from an opera singer and a classical opera, at least in the traditional. Of course, now we're in the 21st century. As I said, things have become a lot more fluid and flexible in what we find in the classical music scene and productions. But here, you hear Caballé's voice. It has all the roundness and bell-like tone quality. It's like this silver, golden strand all the way through. And Freddie Mercury's voice is so arresting, so powerful, more raw, but the two make such a wonderful balance and contrast together.
How can I forget
musical versatility. We have this beautiful soprano line running up here. We have the chorus, which is giving a nice backing sound here. And then the orchestra does that grand flourish down, and then suddenly we're shifted into this more gentle, fluid gathering for the next onslaught. It's a bit like a storm, a thunderstorm. I happen to love thunderstorms, where the rain comes crashing in, and you just see it sweeping across the fields, one band after the next, and the wind is blowing the trees, and it starts to ease up for a moment, but you know that it's just gathering its forces to come again. And that's the feeling I get with this music, is this incredible passion and power and raw, wild storm in such a beautiful way.
God will He will meet again someday. Let the songs
Here
begin.
we go again.
Let the music play.
You've got to love the way he just screams that out. Let the music play. It's like, what else could you do to make it more triumphant, joyful, celebratory, and demanding? This is an anthem of music.
Let the music play.
And then here comes the music.
The voices sing. Start the celebrations. And cry. Come alive. And shake the foundations from the sky.
And here we are again at this grand climax. This is such a great build-up here. Again, as I said, it's the gathering of forces, and then the next wave of the storm comes pouring in on us. And we build, and we have, this start the celebration, and cry, come alive, and shake the foundations from the skies. Shake the foundations from the skies. That sounds a bit like a storm. And then the rhythm of that, as it's building and building and building, this call and answer, back and forth, building and building, and we have this grand climax on skies, and then the rhythm changes just enough to kind of reinforce. It's like it's hitting that same moment, pushing it a little higher, a little more forwards, a little more. Listen to what it is again.
Make the voices sing. Start the celebrations. And cry. Come alive. And shake the foundations from the sky.
You hear it, you feel it, it's just... And it could have been just wonderful to just arrive there and pause, but then that grand descent down, and then that's not enough. Let's go on back up again, and then immediately back into Barcelona. You see me getting excited because this is incredible music. This is really great music, and you just can't contain yourself. I can't contain myself. That's the way it is.
Such a beautiful horizon, Barcelona, like a jewel in the sun.
That's the first moment. In that duet moment, that's the first time they're singing Italian together. Up until that point, it was Freddie with English, Montserrat with Italian. And now suddenly, finally, they come and they're singing the same language.
Such a beautiful horizon, Barcelona, like a jewel in the sun. Por ti seré gobierno de tu Barcelona, if God is willing, if God is willing, brings us to the end. Viva!
That's a terrible place to stop. But the lyrics and the music were Freddie's creation, along with the other creator, Mike Moran. But what I hear in these lyrics, knowing that this project came just after Freddie discovered he had AIDS, makes it incredibly painful as well, because what I'm hearing is so breathtaking. I would have loved to see. I'm remembering his comment in that little documentary, the clip, where he says, "Forget rock and roll, just I'm going for opera now." You know, the kid's enthusiasm. It's just as if we just get up one day and decide we're going to go create some opera, and many people, I won't say most, many people would say, "Who are you, you imposter? What do you think you're doing? You can't just waltz in one day and say, I'm going to make an opera. I'm going to sing opera." I mean, come on, opera is something that you spend years and years and years learning how to handle your voice. And then if you're a composer, I mean, the great composers, the great classical composers spent a long time creating operas and put a lot of energy into it. And you're just going to waltz in here and say that you're doing opera? And yet he did it. And that attitude that I picked up on the little documentary that Vlad had me look at, that he was completely fascinated and ready to throw himself into this kind of creative process. Had he lived longer, I wonder what we would have had. And it's painful to think that we will never be able to find out. And I'm sure the world lost some incredible music when it lost Freddie Mercury. More than that, though, I hear in these lyrics a will to live, to thrive, to be alive, to live fully alive to the last moment. And at the same time, this awareness that it won't go on forever. And we hope that we will be able to continue. If God is willing, we will meet again. We will hope that we will meet again. If God is willing, we'll be friends until the end. There's this awareness of an end, that at some point we will no longer meet. And it's painful, because I think that it is Freddie's awareness of his mortality at that point shining through in the music. And yet that is something that makes the music even more alive and more powerful and raw and honest and compelling, because it's facing mortality in this wonderful celebratory way. Friends, until the end, viva! Not willing to just lay down and die. Let's live until the last moment. Well, this is Freddie Mercury, and it is, beyond that, music. Not rock music, not classical music, but purely music. Fully, passionately, completely music and alive. I want to see how Freddie Mercury ended up getting to this place. I want to trace his journey from the beginning with Queen all along. I'm interested in seeing how Queen developed as a group, as a band, but I am also, after listening to this, very interested to be attentive to Freddie Mercury's journey as well, and watch him grow from the beginning all the way up to this point. And so the journey begins. And the next one will be from the beginning. Of course, by the time this goes live, we will have already recorded several more ahead of time, as many as possible, and they are already, now as you're watching this, available on my Ko-fi and Patreon pages. We are continuing to work on this project full speed, and as we have the videos ready, we're immediately posting all of them on Ko-fi and Patreon. So if you want to have access ahead of time, you might consider joining me there as well. Again, happy anniversary, Queen, Freddie Mercury, Brian May, all the rest. Happy anniversary to all the lovers of Queen, and more to all the lovers of music everywhere. I'll see you soon.